Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a nice welcome for Denis Kelly.
Thank you.
Oh, there you are. That was me who called you.
Yes, I know.
There have been in a couple of recent articles. Sandy victims file class action suit. Attorneys representing a group of Hurricane Sandy victims who contend that their claims were denied by their insurance companies based on doctored damage reports filed a federal class action suit last Friday, alleging that Wright National Flood Insurance Company conspired with engineers and adjusters to commit fraud. The lawsuit was filed on November 21st, U.S. District Court. This is what Denis Kelly said. We fear the evidence that the changing of the engineer's report to deny our clients' coverage is pervasive, and we allege that defendants conspired to change those reports, said Long Beach attorney Denis Kelly. And then there was another follow-up story. So, Denis, what is amazing to me is that this is not an isolated incident. You have been contacted by hundreds of people. Now I believe over 250 people where this has happened to. Talk about in your career, how stunning has this whole process been that so many families have contacted you about these horrendous insurance scams that have been going on?
Thank you, Howie. And I want to thank everybody for their patience. It took me a while to get over here. I was actually trying to do some Christmas decorating in the house and then have a hamburger. And then so my wife said, "You got to go." Well, I just want to clarify a couple of points. We are being contacted by people who now realize that they may have been the victim of a fraud perpetrated by the very people who were supposed to pay their insurance claim resulting from the flood. So I think when you reference 250 people, let me just give you some background. First, what happened here was I was retained by 240 people to pursue their flood claims. What does that mean? That means people came to me saying, "Listen, I think I was grossly underpaid. You know, my house was literally destroyed, and they only paid me $50,000 or $30,000. I need you to help me pursue this claim." And it's quite a procedure to pursue the claim. You have to, make sure that you either have an estimate by a licensed contractor or an adjuster, and then you've got to have a proof of loss prepared, which seems to be a simple document in the sense that it's a one-page document, but it's not an easy document to fill out. And it has to be absolutely accurate, and it has to be prepared in a certain way, and it has to be submitted along with the documentation, and then it has to be served on the insurance company. And that's the prelude to a lawsuit, in which if you're not then paid for your submitted proof of loss, you can pursue a lawsuit in federal court. So I represent approximately 240 people who filed lawsuits individually. I represent each one of them in the Eastern District of New York, here out in Central Iceland. During the course of processing those suits, we had one particular client over at 24 Michigan Street who brought to our attention that when he objected, to make a long story, and it's a good story, short, when he objected to the engineer's report that was given to him by U.S. Forensic and Wright Flood, the engineer who supposedly prepared that report said to him, "That's not my report," and whipped out of his bag another report, which we now call the first report. And the first report's conclusion was this house was absolutely devastated and damaged by this flood, and it's unlivable and it's uneconomic to try to restore it or repair it. He was, and this man, I won't embarrass him and mention his name. It's been mentioned in the paper many times at this point, but this man will be, for lack of a better term, the hero of the events. He had the presence of mind to take out his phone and take a photograph of the first page, which reflects the identity of the report, and the third page, which has the ultimate conclusions and opinions. So he gave that to us, and ultimately we presented it to the court this past September when we were in the middle of a mediation for him, and we we said to the other side, hey, listen, you got this other report, and you got to give us this other report, and why didn't you give us this other report? And they dismissed us. We brought it to the judge's attention on October 16th. We had a hearing in which not only did my client, this client I'm referencing, testify, the engineer who came to the house testified, and then the engineer from U.S. Forensic who changed the report through what they euphemistically are referring to as a peer review, which now I believe when the term peer review is used means I need to change your conclusion. I don't like your report, so we're going to change it. And it was, I told somebody it was like I was in an episode of Law and Order. At certain points in time during the testimony, and I'm not kidding, I've been practicing for 22 years, I could hear in the background, dun dun. And I almost fell off my seat at one point in time. And it was just, I walked out of that hearing on October 16th saying to myself, it couldn't have gone any better than that. Meaning, in other words, we caught them red-handed. It was obvious. And then I was wondering, what is the judge going to do? What would I do after practicing so many years? Sometimes I try to put myself in the judge's shoes. What would I do? What do you do with that? Because it was mind-boggling. Even the judge said at the conclusion of the hearing, I got to wrap my head around this. I can't believe he said, I never thought in reading the papers in preparations for today's hearing that I would ever hear what I heard today. And then he wrote a scathing 27-page opinion.
Gary Brown, the judge.
Yes, the Magistrate Judge Gary Brown. And since then, because of the publicity, which I haven't really sought in the sense that I'm not seeking it for business for myself because I have enough business right now. But I didn't seek the publicity, but when the publicity came, I welcomed it. And why did I welcome it? Because the judge said in his opinion, what he fears is this could be potentially widespread, this type of fraud. And I am convinced it's widespread.
Exactly the Herald's headline. Insurance practices may be widespread.
So, and what, it turns out, I am now utterly convinced it's widespread. So following up on the long-winded, answer to Howie's question, now we're hearing from people who are describing different scenarios, but as alarming, if not more alarming. We've got 2 cases in Brooklyn. We started a class action against Travelers and a class action against Hartford because we have 2 cases in Brooklyn where we have, I would say, unrefutable evidence that the engineer, who was a Brooklyn engineer, who was hired by the company on behalf of the insurance company, hired a Brooklyn engineer, wrote the report, house is devastated, flood, blah, 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 all result of flood, right? What we call hydrodynamic and hydrostatic pressure. Those are big terms for us. They took his original report, which ascribed all the damages to flood, and they photoshopped his signature from that report onto their report saying it has nothing to do with flood. And we know this because we've spoken to the engineer, and we know it because we've done an analysis of their report and the 2 signatures. And then we, more or less photoshopped ourselves. In other words, we attempted this and said, can this be done? How is this done? And we had people do it for us, and it appears that they photoshopped the signature twice. And plus, we have the original engineer who says I didn't write that report. and they photoshopped not only his signature, but they photoshopped his New York State engineering license seal on the report. Here's another one. I'm giving you these instances, Howie, because I want people to know what to look for. Okay? So we have quite a number of people who didn't have an engineer come to their house. Okay? They had an employee of the engineering firm. They had an unlicensed engineer, meaning an engineer not licensed in New York, but licensed in, South Carolina or someplace else, come to the house, take the photographs, behave and act as if they were an engineer, take the photographs, take the measurements, and write themselves some comments, and then an engineer who's licensed in New York but has his offices down in Louisiana or South Carolina sits at a computer and writes the report. That happened, and we actually know it was such a well-established pattern here in Long Beach that we know the names. We as people did an Asher Cohen come to your house, or there's another one I can't remember his name off the top of my head. And we asked people, okay, they came down. Did you ever speak to Michael Grove? Did you ever speak to? And we would read the engineer off the report. Did you ever meet a person by that name? And we've got quite a number of cases in which they never met the engineer, and the engineer was never there. Now, these are people who have been devastated as a result of flood, have made claims saying you, whether it's the insurance company or the National Flood Insurance Plan, you did not pay me enough. My damages are significant here. My house now needs to be, it's either substantially damaged or it needs to be elevated, or you gave me $30,000 for damages, and I haven't been told, there's not one contractor who told me I could get any of this work that needs to be done for that amount of money. And they don't have the moral compass that dictates that they should send licensed professionals to a house such as that. Now, bear in mind, this is the other thing. I know that the audience knows this because we on the South Shore know this, but I want the rest of the world to hear it. Stop acting like my clients and the people who were devastated by the flood down here are somehow, on the dole or taking advantage or are asking for benefits that haven't been paid for. These are premium paying, tax paying, middle class homeowners who, for the most part, and I know all of my clients very well, for the most part, have done everything that they were supposed to do their entire lives. The hurricane came, Sandy came, and it was, you know what, I'm okay. Thank God thank God the bank told me I couldn't have my mortgage without the flood insurance. I have the flood insurance. I've been paying the premiums. I'm okay. Well, you know what? None of them are okay. That's one, problem I have is that I think that some of the outside world, including the federal government, have taken the approach that, what are you complaining about? This is a program here to help you. No. What do you mean what am I complaining about? This was an arm's length agreement. This was something that you told me I could have a mortgage down here for this house if I bought the insurance, and I entered into that contract. And I would tell you the contract, and I'm talking theoretically here, is with the U.S. government. It's with the banking system. It is with the legal system. It is with the real estate industry. And I could go on and on. So that's number one. Number two is, and I'm going to pose this question because Mary Ellen brought up the now infamous words here on Long Island, New York Rising. Answer me this. Riddle me this, Batman. Why in God's name do I need New York Rising if I have flood insurance? That's what I don't understand. See, when New York Rising was first announced, people like Mary Ellen and myself and my clients said, wow, okay, this could be really good. And you know what? Why we said that? Well, flood insurance takes care of their end, and I get the money, and I need a little bit more, right? Because flood insurance policies are capped at $250,000 for single-family homes. So you say, well, I've been devastated. I could probably I'm gonna need a little bit more than flood is gonna give me. So if I have to elevate, or if there's extra work that needs to be done, and I get another $50,000 on top of what flood gave me, I could actually get the work done here in metropolitan New York after a storm where contracting costs skyrocketed. Never mind skyrocketed. Contracting period was very difficult to get.
To get hold of it.
To find
a qualified contractor.
Dennis, we might have another client. You ready? Let me just